listener production.
Hi, Natarsha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, the cuts to the CSIRO, why we all should be concerned about the job losses and lack of funding for our leading science, research and development industries. We speak with an expert who warns the government is leaving Australia dangerously exposed, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence and future pandemics. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Thursday, the 20th of November. US President Donald Trump has signed off on releasing the remaining Epstein files after the bill was approved by both houses of US Congress earlier this week. Posting to Truth Social, President Trump said, quote, "Perhaps the truth and these Democrats and their associations with Jeffrey Epstein will soon be revealed because I have just signed the bill to release the Epstein files." The US Department of Justice now has 30 days to release all unclassified documents about its investigation into the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein survivor Annie Farmer has told CBS News in the US, today is another important step forward, but it is bittersweet.
This feels like a victory, a long overdue victory in a fight that many people have fought, and that feels great. But it's bittersweet, because of I think what it took for us to get to this moment.
Adelaide will not host next year's UN Climate Summit. Climate Minister Chris Bowen revealed Australia was willing to hand over the hosting rights to Turkey in exchange for negotiations to run and help set up a Pacific leaders meeting before the summit. But opposition leader Susan Lee thinks dodging the hosting bill is a win.
Chris Bowen's very disappointed today, I'm sure. But Australians should be very pleased with a decision that was taken away from this country and made overseas.
And good news for future home buyers, with real estate agents in Victoria now legally required to reveal a property's reserve price before selling it. The Victorian government says the laws, which will be introduced to Parliament next year, are designed to crack down on underquoting. Any agent who fails to declare the reserve will be unable to proceed to auction or sale. Now it's time to get into our deep dive on the latest cutbacks to our leading science and technology industries. In the latest round of cuts, 350 research staff have been sacked at the CSIRO. But experts are warning this is just the tip of the iceberg, with federal governments over many years not properly funding nor supporting our world-leading scientists and researchers. We chat with Winn, the CEO of Science and Technology Australia. Ryan, thanks so much for joining us. This is such a concerning story. We know the latest cuts seem to be coming regarding the CSIRO, and up to 350 research staff are set to be sacked. What's your reaction to these latest cuts?
This is a terrible situation for the reality of science. To be coming before a government review, it's delivered on the nature of science in Australia at the same time as coming before Christmas. This is a terrible situation, not just for CSIRO staff, but for the whole science sector in Australia.
Now, in regards to the entire science sector, we're going to break down a couple of key points here at the moment. Let's start with the CSIRO to start with, and then we'll go into research and development as well. In regards to the CSIRO, when you look back at its history of groundbreaking discoveries and extraordinary work that is leading the world, it's quite amazing to go through what they've discovered. They've discovered Wi-Fi, they've discovered AeroGuard, and more recently have also developed a world-first barley grain with an ultra-low level of gluten. Do you think we can ever underestimate the extraordinary influence the CSIRO has?
No, look, we can't. And this is the reality of amazing scientists working in a national facility like this that have done amazing things, that led things that most Australians wouldn't even know about. And you pointed out a couple of amazing ones, but they've also done amazing things about extending the wear use of contact lenses. They developed the polymer note, so the plastic note that we have all got so used to and now used around the world. Hendra vaccine that's protecting horses in the agricultural industry. And look, let's not forget, I love ice cream. And they helped develop emulsifiers that made soft serve ice cream better and more stable and smoother. Like, these are scientists that are doing things that industry and universities probably wouldn't do because they don't have that capacity. It's the patient capital of science and institutions like this that lead the groundbreaking research that changes our lives.
And you make that great point there. It changes our life. One may argue, especially out of the result of the pandemic with COVID-19, there should be even more money pumped into research and development and science because we know another pandemic will eventually come and surely we have to be ahead of the game.
Oh, without a doubt. And we saw CSIRO, the Australian Nuclear Science Technology Organisation, and others deeply in the middle of this COVID pandemic. They came up with so many solutions and they had infrastructure, importantly, that was used by other researchers who found other discoveries and helped create detection tools for COVID, as well as they were used to develop vaccines for malaria. These are facilities that are changing discoveries and are important in the crisis, but equally are they ready to help us deal with the next crisis we don't even know it's coming around the corner.
And it seems it's certainly massive cuts from both sides of government, both Labor and Liberal, and decades of neglect to support the science industry. Why are the governments cutting support to the science industry?
Look, and I guess I would clarify that a little bit. I don't want to suggest that government's putting a red ruler through CSIRO in its budget line. What both governments have done is just not recognise the cost of science, like our household budgets are going up with inflation every year. What's happened is CSIRO's budget has only gone up by about 1.3% a year, but we know that inflation is going up 2.7% every year on average. And it means that the real effective dollars that CSIRO has to do the work it does is reducing in real terms year on year. A perfect example is everyone knows how much their fuel has gone up over the last number of years. It's gone up astronomically with inflation and pressures. CSIRO runs an enormous, amazing science vessel that uses fuel and processes and has power and staff wages and these things. That doesn't go up 1.3%. That's going up enormous amounts. And the discoveries that it's doing around climate change, understanding the nature of the biodiversity, helping us to understand the ice cores inside those amazing glaciers to understand what the climate was like over the last million years so we can understand what is happening now and what will happen in the future.
Ryan, so it's more about not cutting deeply right now. It's actually about not ensuring that the funding can keep up with increasing costs, exactly the same as every household budget across the country right now. We know grocery bills have increased 40%, electricity bills have increased 30%. The science industry is like a business in itself. So basically, they're not getting the funds they need to continue to operate at what is expected.
Absolutely. This is just the reality of the dollar doesn't go as far as it goes before. And CSIRO has been amazing and had to make some tough decisions over the last years. We saw nearly 800 jobs lost at CSIRO in non-science roles, and they've looked for all the opportunities they can do to not reduce the science that is delivered to our economy and to ideas. And that's amazing. But now they've got the hard choices of they've done all the cutting and efficiencies and find all those hidden pockets of money and all the duplication they can as much as possible. Now they're cutting science. And that's a hard thing to do when we know all the science is doing amazing things. And at the same time, we have discovery science where we don't even know where the next big breakthrough will come from. And that's the real risk of focusing too much on priorities. We always want to see translation. We want to see the next products, the next Wi-Fi, and they're fantastic. But it's really hard to focus on translating and creating commercial success when you don't know where the ideas come from. And that's the patient capital that comes from organisations like CSIRO.
So is this more focusing the governments, both sides, focusing on short-term gains? They need to have something happen now rather than saying, look, research and development and science is about planning for the future, which may not deliver instant results.
Absolutely. And we know the return on investment in the long term from CSIRO is amazing. Like we're talking up to $7 in return for every dollar put into research. These are amazing, groundbreaking and economic changing investments. But we know that science is a slow burn. We need to invest in the long term to understand it. And it goes to the point that we need to say it's not about just giving CSIRO money. It's about sustainable money to support sustainable science.
You were talking there about the long-term benefits, Ryan. When you look at research and development, the stats are pretty terrifying. It's been going backwards, as in the support for research and development in Australia for more than 15 years. Our overall national investment in R&D is only 1.68% of GDP. That is well below the average of 2.7% among OECD nations.
It's terrifying, isn't it? And that equates to about $30 billion per annum our economy is not putting into research. But I also pick you up on the average part of there. 2.7 is the average of the OECD. You look at United States is sitting at 4.9%, Japan's at 3.4%. These are enormous number differences compared to what we're doing. And if we want to rely on extractive industries like mining, which we know are going to be problematic in a climate change environment, we need new jobs in industries coming through. And it's not just for people now, it's for our kids. These ideas will drive the industries that will give the jobs for our kids and create prosperity and better living environments for all of us.
There's been a lot of focus recently, Ryan, about supporting Australian industry, keeping our jobs here, supporting the next generation. I ask you, why wouldn't the government and authorities invest in the future of science, which basically ensures that we have our own technology and own knowledge to ensure our very own future?
It's a really great question. And I get stumped every time people ask me that question because it's a no-brainer. Like, why wouldn't we invest in Australian future based on Australian ideas? We have a Future Made in Australia agenda, which is fantastic. It's great to see government invest in new industries and sort of reinforcing the things. But we're kind of focusing at the end of the pipeline of the jobs and the industries now, not necessarily building that deep pipeline that comes through from our university, from our researchers, from the great talent that takes time. But the best ideas are those that are developed here rather than us shipping them overseas. And we see it in other industries. We have great technologies and ideas that come through universities. They head overseas and we lose that talent that goes with it. We lose the investment. We lose the potential markets that go with it. And then we pay a premium to bring those businesses or even just the products back to Australia.
We know the future is AI. We know the future is in research and development. We know the future is in technologies of the future. How dangerous do you think this backward way of support for what is our future, how dangerous do you think it is for not only the industry but all of us?
Look, these technologies are rapidly changing our world. And it's not a question of how much. It's that will, and it's the more we can control that, but also have ownership and ideas around what that looks like. There are challenges in overseas countries defining the technologies we have, us not having the skill set to hear. And I think we hear the word often, sovereign capability, but that means us having a defining choice in what we can produce here, whether it's for the jobs of the future or the fact that we may potentially be in a conflict at some stage in the future. We've seen it in Europe and other places where the ability to develop munitions or technologies or software products, anyone tried to find products during COVID when our borders were closed, we didn't have a manufacturing sector, could remember how hard it was to get some things. Like the story I heard once was we could make tomato sauce here, but we didn't make the bottles to put the tomato sauce into.
Yes.
And I think this is kind of the challenge we're talking about here. Is like we have some of the people here that can do technologies, but then we send it overseas and what products we get back. And I don't know what the AI technologies will be in the future or what those future industries will look like. But if we're not even trying to keep those things here and develop those ideas and back those ideas to be here, it's easier to keep it here than to ship it away and try to bring it back.
We really appreciate your analysis and thanks so much for joining us, Ryan.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was the CEO of Science and Technology Australia, Ryan Winn. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'll be back tonight with an episode of The Beefing on the Ashes. And we'd love you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Natarsha Belling. Thanks for your company.